It's now my pleasure to introduce my friend and co-founder of VRLA, Jonnie Ross!
Thank you, Cosmo. Thank you. That was a hell of a shout, and I'll do the same for Roy. So, Cosmo's right. We ought to calibrate our expectations. 2016 is going to be a big year for VR, but maybe not for the change it brings immediately, so much as what this moment signifies and the wheels that it sets in motion. This is the year that VR starts to go mainstream, when the rest of the world, outside of our community, gains access to the kind of experiences that, up until now, were just limited to special events. In the past few years, I've had the privilege of showing a lot of VR to a lot of people. And I've been continually blown away by the wild variety of people's reactions and the insights that emerge. Insights into human nature, personality, perception. It's like a mirror. And what I'd like to share with you today is one of the most fascinating things that I've found. A phenomenon around increasing levels of presence. An emotional process that results from these changes in presence and the opportunities this opens up for all of us. And my walkie-talkie, which I left on backstage if someone wants to shut it off. As I'm sure a lot of you remember, especially developers, back in the DK1 days, let's call it look-around VR, where you could look around but you can't lean. You'd show people a couple demos and everyone would be pretty excited and impressed, but it was probably only about 1 in 10 people that would have that over-the-top, holy shit, this is the future of everything type of reaction. Then DK2 comes along, let's call it lean around VR, where you can lean around but you can't generally stand or walk yet. And that ratio jumps to about 3 in 10 people that have that epiphany reaction, this full presence moment, where this informs their life somehow and how they see the world. After DK2, it's hardware like Crescent Bay, CV1, Project Morpheus, experiences like Toybox, Bullet Train, and Playroom, for example. Let's call it move around VR, where you can duck, you can stand, and take a few steps, not very far, but it flips yet another switch in your brain. And you've got hands in VR, because you have controllers now that let you really interact with things in the environment. Pluck bullets out of the air and throw them back at your enemies. And now, this is when people really start to flip out. Maybe 7 out of 10 people start to have that revelatory reaction that this is the future of gaming and probably a whole lot more. Their mind is blown. Now, that doesn't mean that everyone gives it a whole lot more thought, but those 7 people walk out of the demo just awestruck, feeling like they've been to the future, that it worked. They were totally immersed in another world, and shocked when they took the HMD off to discover they've never really left the room. And then, as if that wasn't cool enough, there's walk-around VR, like the kind that Valve and HTC are showing on the Vive, and that we can only assume that Oculus and Sony have on their roadmap as well. You show someone an experience like Aperture Science, for example, and we hit yet another level of immersion, because not only do you have hands, but it's a highly detailed and convincing world that you can walk around in. You can take a couple steps, then take a couple more steps, look back over your shoulder, and it's as if the door closed behind you. You're completely and totally in another world. Until you get the blue grid, the cord tugs, someone yells at you, don't hit the wall. I've hit the wall before. But even despite all that, it's a new level of transcendence. Now you're talking about maybe 9 out of 10 people who come out and they're just completely mind blown, convinced of the potential of VR in different ways to different degrees, but the conviction is past yet another tipping point. Almost everyone comes out a believer, saying things like, I felt like I was completely immersed in another world. I was there. And that's when the wheels start turning. And this is the part that's really hard to pin down, because for some of us, it rolls right into conversation. We talk about it. We're fascinated by it. VR is our new obsession. And then for a lot of us, it's just a cool thing, and we move on with our lives. But what I've noticed is, no matter who you are, once you've had that full presence moment, this new idea gets lodged in the back of your mind. You've just been given a brand new challenge to chew on. This idea that there's a device, a new technology, that can fool your brain into believing that you're somewhere else. For me personally, since I started working with VR a couple years ago, it's changed my sense of perception, my sense of myself, the life that I've lived. When I look down at my hands, I see them differently. I'm much more inclined to believe that I'm a soul piloting a body. And I thought that's what psychedelics were for. So, all of this to say, an emotional process is set into motion when you try VR. And it's accelerated by the depth of the experience that you have. And now, the whole world is about to start this process. It's almost like we should have a pamphlet. And today, right here at VRLA, is the first day in history that more than a dozen of these higher-end move-around and walk-around experiences are being shown at an event that's completely open to the public. That's happening right here today. This is that tipping point. We've got the latest Vives. HTC is here. Epic is showing Bullet Train. We've got the consumer version of the Oculus Rift. Survios is unveiling their latest game with multiplayer and so much more. Some of the best VR experiences to date. And what's crazy is we just had a tech revolution with smartphones. And before that, the internet. And now this new thing is happening with potentially deeper implications because it so completely substitutes certain aspects of our perception. And it's compounding itself on top of the two previous tech revolutions, arguably moving at an even faster pace as a result. We're turning a really big corner. We're doing it fast. And it's going to get weird. We know that change is hard. When someone changes our reality or our sense of reality, it can be a challenging thing to confront, right? For some of us, it's not a big deal. Escape from reality? Sign me up. But for others of us, it's scary. Let's be aware that because this affects our perception so deeply, it sets into motion a conscious and subconscious emotional reaction. Let's take that energy and jujitsu it right back into the brilliant things we can do with this tool. When we take off the HMD and we look at our actual reality, not virtual reality, let's be honest, it's a mess. The problems we're facing as people on planet Earth are so epic, they're overwhelming. And here, we've just been handed this incredible, super weird gift, a brand new tool. As if the internet and smartphones weren't enough. We already live in magic times and they just got like 20 times more magical. We have in front of us an unprecedented opportunity to do incredible things with this new medium. Think about this. When you're a kid, you've still got one foot in imagination land. You're not moved completely into reality until you get older. Is it possible that through VR we could better maintain or even repair our connection to our imagination? Big thinkers, big problem solvers have always been at pains because if people only had the imagination, if they could see it, if they could experience it, if they could feel the emotional value of being on the other side of the problem, having solved it, they'd know that we could do this tomorrow. In this audience is the next Elon Musk. And he or she is not going to need to build a Hyperloop test track to prove that it's possible. She's going to use VR and AR to prototype it first. And it's going to be a great thing for the world because this kind of positive evolution is going to happen much faster than it has before. Impossible will be an outmoded notion because we can use virtual and augmented reality to say, that's not true. Maybe this is the greatest opportunity to come along since Hot Pockets were $2.99. That's a really good deal. Unless you go 5 for 5 on a mix and match. That's a way better deal. That's what I would recommend. But in all seriousness, VR has not even hit the mainstream yet. And already people are using it to do things like treat phobias, enhance meditation, plan life-saving operations, evolve journalism through increased empathy, treat lazy eye, a problem that's been stagnant for almost a century, manage pain for burn victims in a hospital setting, help those who are unable to travel and play. And the incredible games and experiences that you try here today are actually opening all of these doors, making all of this possible. So don't forget your imagination in 2016. This is one of those crazy moments in time. What else might VR be good for that we haven't even discovered yet? Thank you.